Guess a 3, 2, 1, right?
3, 2, 1, and go.
Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on what side of the country you may be on. My name is Michael Salzer. I'll be your instructor today with the module of utilizing the weekly. Now, before we get started, I'd like to give you just a little bit of background on myself for those of you who I may not have met yet. I've been with Delicato 2 years now, just came up on my 2-year anniversary in July. Started in the industry just shy of about 15 years ago with E&J Gallo Winery out of college, which I'm sure some of you on this call started there as well. Bounced around a couple states, couple distributors with them from Georgia to Florida. The last position I held prior to coming to Delicato was at Banffy Vintners for about 7 years and ended up there as the Southeast Divisional Manager prior to coming on board here. For those who have already worked with this company, or if you're just now starting or a couple months in, cannot say we work for a better company. Delicato Family Wines is a fantastic supplier. It's the best in the business. It's family owned. We have a culture here. It's a winning culture, but we have fun while we're doing it. And hopefully you get to see some of that fun, excitement, and encouragement as we walk through this module and the rest that you'll be walking through throughout the weeks to come. So without further ado, let's get started and let's have some fun. So today, we're going to talk about utilizing the weekly and how we can make it work for you. So we'll first start off, for those who haven't been with the company, what is the weekly, right? And why is it important? We'll look at the benefits and the opportunities. The most important thing to come out of this module is how you can make it work for yours truly, right? You have to make it work for yourself and be value add. We don't want this to be a check the box. We want to make sure you understand it and use it to your benefit. We'll walk through our national KSOs. For those, once again, who are with the company, we'll know what these are. If they're not, we'll do a tutorial and walk through what they are. And then how you can take those macro visions and make a micro and localize them for your individual market, depending on what territory or region you may be working out of. We have a new weekly template. If you've been with the company, you know there's been a couple of versions of this. One that may be used on the West Coast could be different in the East. We now have a unified template that we'll be using, and we'll walk through that and what each of those sections are and look at some live examples in action. And lastly, this is meant to be interactional. So I don't want to just be talking. We'll have some breakout sessions, some questions along the way. But by now that you've been going through these modules, everyone is familiar with Zoom. As you see the annotate buttons down there, if you have any questions along the way, please raise your hand. If you want me to go slower or go faster or a hand clap, we welcome all those. Just please no thumbs down. Let's keep from those. All right. So let's get it going. Before we start, I'd like to ask a question, present a question to the group. So we're all in sales. Hopefully, if this is not your first sales job, you've been in one previously. I'm sure week to week, as fire drills come up, balls are in the air, you have tasks that are happening. We've all felt like this at some point in time. Am I right? By show of hands, how many people have felt like this from week to week? Yep, seeing some hands from the group. It's fantastic. Listen, we get it, all right? This is a scene, for those who don't know it, from my personal favorite comedy movie of all time, Tommy Boy, one of the best guys, rest in peace, Chris Farley. We've all felt like this before, right? You know, the time gets away from us. We have a couple tasks here. We get 3 more thrown on us. Fire drill happens, and you end up looking like this, right? The point of this module is to try to make you not look like this and utilize the tools and the systems we have here at Delicato to make you be more calm and able to attack your week and be successful in your sales. So for anybody who's worked with me or known me, I always like to start my presentations as well with a couple quotes. And here's a couple that'll tie in nicely to the module we're about to walk through. Number 1 being, no one person or business can succeed in any great degree if you are not properly organized. Words couldn't ring truer. Another from a famous entrepreneur and motivational speaker, Jim Rohn. This is one of my personal favorites. You either run the day or the day runs you. And in this case, you either run your week or the week runs you. So what we're going to walk through throughout the next 20 to 30 minutes is going to help you so you can run your week. So let's get started. First off, what is the weekly? Well, the weekly is an accountability tool that provides a detailed insight to the sales activities that are conducted by you, area sales manager, during a given week. Now, why is this important? Why do we do the weekly? Well, as I just illustrated on the previous slide, being organized is key, right? You cannot have any great success individually or as a company if you are not properly organized. The weekly will help you do just that. Efficient. We all know time is money. The weekly will help you be more efficient with your time so you can ultimately see better success. Transparency. You want to be transparent between yourself and your regional manager and even the divisional manager on the activities that are happening on and throughout the week. And lastly, if you're doing these things, this will lead and garner better results for both you individually in your market and the company as a whole. So now as we shift to benefits and opportunities, let's talk about how we make the weekly work for you. So first and foremost, for all on the call, you got to put in the time. With anything that you want to get and have success in, you have to put in the time. Give it the time it deserves and make it work for you. Do not make this a check the box. The weekly is a tool and value added tool that'll make you more successful in what you do. It's great for follow-up, right? We've all done this before. We've worked in the market. For those who haven't, you obviously will. We want to make sure your work is receiving the results that it deserves, okay? So this tool will help you follow up and make sure those activities that you are conducting are actually coming to fruition. And then lastly, we want you to share this. So whether it's in your upcoming one-on-ones and GPS, which is a module you'll learn a little bit later throughout the university, you want to share and be transparent with your manager and see how he or she may be able to help in some certain situations. Maybe it's a follow-up we just talked about that you need their assistance with the wholesaler on getting action on. So we talk about the new weekly. What is the new weekly and what are the sections that are broken down to? Well, there's 4. So number 1, KSO SMART goal results. Now, for those who are new to the company and they're not familiar to KSOs, we're going to do a deeper dive into this. We're also going to identify what a SMART goal actually is and provide some examples of that. That is section 1. Section 2, trade focus recap. Okay, so whether you're dragging a bag, you're stocking a shelf, or building out a display, this is where you can capture the activities in the trade and what some recap is, as well as follow-up. Communication, it goes both ways, right? Internal and external. So whether you're communicating with the wholesaler and you had a general sales meeting, or maybe a sales call with some divisional or area sales managers, or it's communication with our customer development team or our trade marketing team. What are the actual items that come out of those calls that need follow-up on? This is the section where you can capture just what those are. And lastly, market insight, issues, and opportunities. So we'll walk through some examples of this, but what are you seeing in the market when you're out? Maybe it's a unique piece of point of sale that we can potentially replicate for an upcoming thematic program we have. Or maybe it's some insight to some changes happening at the wholesaler between their sales teams or a supplier leaving and going to another distributor that we potentially could act upon and turn it into some results for Delicata. So now we're going to go through what a SMART goal stands for and what this acronym actually means. So right now I'm going to take a pause and we're going to do a poll of the group. Actually, not a poll. I'm just going to ask you to raise your hand. And by show of hands, who thinks they know what the S stands for? All right, John, I see you right there have raised your hand. John, you're absolutely correct. Specific, right? So in here, this is where you're going to state your objective, right? You need to use actionable words, deliver, achieve, expand. This is where you're going to be specific with what you're looking to do. Next, we're at the M of the SMART goal. I see Barry. There we go. Measurable. You're absolutely right. So this is where you need to actually provide what you're going to be measuring. So data targets, the question you should be asking yourself, can you track this? If this is a non-trackable objective that you just stated, it's probably not a SMART objective, okay? Next, I see someone's ready. Looks like Connie's ready for A. Attainable, right? This could also mean achievable or attainable, depending on which acronym. Both ultimately mean the same thing. So is it possible to obtain? Now, we all know in sales, sometimes we can differ this attainable goal. We can have a difference of opinions between us and our wholesaler. But ultimately, we want to make sure this is something that these guys and gals are going to achieve and something that they can achieve and they're going to strive after. Yep, John, sorry, I jumped the gun. You're absolutely right. Relevance. So does it make sense to what we're trying to accomplish? Is it a focus brand for Delicato? Is it a focus period for us? Does it make sense in the channel we are targeting with the wholesale? We want to make sure it's relevant. And last T, Cheryl came in. You're absolutely right. It's got to be time bound, time based, right? So is this a timely objective? When do you want to accomplish it? If you're going to deliver the goal and you're going to be specific what that goal is, when is it going to happen? Is it 90 days, 120, H1, or maybe it's a June, July, summer push? So this is what SMART goal is. We're now going to transition into our KSOs. And for those, once again, who are new with the company, we'll walk through what our national key selling objectives are for Delicato. So let's jump in. We have 4: BODA breakthrough, expand distribution, import leadership, and fine wine growth. So we're going to go one by one. I'm going to share you a couple of real life examples from some ASM templates around the market. And then we are going to ask you to break out into a section and put you into groups, and you'll actually create a couple of these on your own. But let's get started and let's look through a couple examples here. So I won't read each of these bullets verbatim, but you can see what our national KSO is for BODA breakthrough. So what does that mean, right? So nationally as a company, we want to leverage the 3-liter category and establish BODA as the #1 premium player. We want to do that across all markets, and we want to do it in the country. We're proud to say we are. We want to successfully launch our new extension line of Nighthawk. We want to make BODA Mini the #2 priority brand. So that's what we mean when we want to break through with BODA as a company. But the question I ask for you is, what does that mean to you? So if you're an area sales manager and you're working in Northeast Florida or upstate New York, how can you take these national macro objectives that we have for our company and localize them, right? The key word, localize them for you. Because ultimately what we do at the street level builds up to state, builds up to region, division, and ultimately helps our company achieve these KSOs that you see here. So let's give a couple examples of what those real life are. Here's one right now. We talked about Nighthawk. So what does that mean for this particular ASM? Well, in this example, it's expand Nighthawk distribution to 50% specific measurable of BODA core in the independent channel timely by close of Q2. Next, you see, this is a chain-driven one, overtaking Black Box as the #1 premium box leader in our biggest chain in the country, Walmart. In this instance, this was in Florida by the close of a time-based H1, and then you see your starting place there with where we started the year. Next, we're going to move on. Well, I'll back up here. Any questions from the team? Is BODA breakthrough? Pretty set, right? All right. So let's move on to our second KSO, and it's expand distribution. In this KSO, we're really looking at outside of BODA. So while BODA, we're expanding distribution, this is really focusing on our core glass brands and really what drives revenue for our company. You see some of the bullet points at the top of your screen, whether it's increasing the merchandising impact, it's survey standards, it's driving our focus, it's using Nielsen data to our advantage to gain distribution. But once again, as I mentioned with BODA breakthrough, what does it mean to you? What does it mean to us, right? So when we're in our market, and like I said, we're in a specific region or a specific section of the country, how can we take this distribution and localize it and ultimately get buy-in from our wholesaler to go out and deliver? So as we did before, let's give a few examples. So here we go. Deliver goals on Q3 Zack Attack on-premise by the glass program. Minimum 25 new by the glass, and they put a volume objective in here, plus 30% volume versus last year. Another is on-premise securing 2 new by the glass and a by the bottle at a specific identified location time during their new fall list rollout. So here's a couple examples here. We'll go through the other 2 KSOs and then we'll actually break out in a group and have you guys do a couple examples on your own. So we got BODA breakthrough, we got expand distribution. Our third KSO is import leadership. So as we're continuing to grow our import portfolio, obviously with the agency brand and partnership with Vigna Santa Rita and then now Schmidt-Sona, we're expanding upon that, and I anticipate we'll continue to expand into the import category. So what does that mean? So for the company, it's achieving our volume and distribution growth on Santa Rita. As the Schmidt-Sona book just came as a partnership, it's continuing to establish that portfolio and really driving in the focus months we've identified on our calendar for the year. And then holding distributors accountable to high execution standards. So that's great, right? That's all very encouraging stuff. But once again, how can we localize this, take this macro objective and make it important for yours truly? So here's some examples that we just went before. Maybe it's a fast start program, right? It's deliver your Jan through April fast start goals. And you see the numbers that are plus 10, 15, and 5% respectively. Or maybe it's a successful launch of a new innovation item like Scarlet Vine. Here, the ASM laid out a 90-day goal, a time frame, and they did a volume and account sold objective. So, last before we break out into the success to the group session, we have fine wine growth as the fourth and final KSO. So, successful launch of Dior, a big addition to the Delicato portfolio with expansion beyond the Pinot Noir and red into the new Chardonnay package and the Rosé line. We really want to achieve our fair share of the wine business relative to this category. So using data to make sure that we are becoming a player in there and growing our share. And on-premise, these are on-premise driven brands and really where we can build out this brand that'll help our chain and customer development team. So what are some examples of fine wine growth as it pertains to an area sales manager? A couple of examples are, maybe it's the successful launch of what I just mentioned, the Rosé and Chardonnay. Here, this was an ASM in North Florida, and they put out a pod goal and volume goal for a specific time period, 90 days. Maybe it's a specific focus of a selling event. So these wines scream country clubs, and there's no greater channel to sell selling events when you're actually conducting a wine dinner. So here's a couple great examples. So now we're going to take a break. We're going to do into a breakout session, and we are going to assign groups for each of these 4 KSOs, and you're going to have 5 minutes to come up with some examples of your own. So let me go ahead and assign groups, and we'll break out. So just looked at the groups. That's great. All these examples are fantastic, guys. So thank you for sharing, and hopefully you've got some value add out of that session and something that we can actually put into action in our own territories coming out of this module. So we walked through KSOs, right? Walked through some examples of SMART goals and how we can localize those. So how does that section look in our actual weekly, right? So that's what we're going to walk through. We're going to walk through each of these 4 sections and then ultimately show you how the weekly is compiled and what you'll be filling out week to week with the sales activities conducted in your market. So we talked about the first, KSO SMART goal results. This is how this will look in Excel format. You have your expand distribution, box breakthrough, expanding import leadership, and fine wine growth. So as you're filling this in, here will be some examples, right? A qualitative statement followed by a quantitative data. So H1 distribution KSO, success against North Florida Delicato dollars. Here they identified they wanted 75% of ASMs to qualify for payout. So what is the current result? This is where we get an update each week. Well, 95% qualified through Q1. Currently on Q2, they're at 72% through 5/29. So this would be something the ASM would be continuing to update week in and week out. And then distribution dashboard is ultimately the state's objective on how we're driving distribution on our focus brands, which you will learn if you haven't already at a later module throughout Delicato U. Box breakthrough. We talked about expanding Nighthawk distribution. You identify what that KSO is and what is the current result through that week. Well, here, as of 5/29, when this weekly was updated, they were at 66% of counts sold. Goal was only 50%, so they're tracking above, which is obviously great to see. Import leadership. You see your Q2 KSO here. Maybe it was achieving a 90-day goal on Scarlet Vine with the launch that we identified. Where are they at through there? So here they're at 292 cases and 132 accounts sold. So they're on pace Well, actually, they're over pace on both volume and accounts sold. So it's great results. And it looks like this area sales manager also dropped in a win this week as it specifically pertained to import leadership, where it looks like they sold a stacker into a multi-unit independent leader. So last is fine wine growth. Maybe it's achieving Dior volume H1 plan in the designated division or channel. And what the current result is here, they're at 104 of 150 case goals. So they're currently 69%, a little behind pace, but moving forward. And this is where you would update that section. So section 1, KSO, SMART goal results. And we are going to move on to section 2, which everyone should be familiar with this section, right? Trade focus recap. So this is where you are going to identify 4 different areas that you're going to fill in each week. So you have chain execution update. Now, if this is a independent market and your non-chain focus, this would be independent execution update. And here's some examples of what that may look like. We're not going to read this verbatim here, but in this particular instance, this was a fast start program. They had a goal, and you see how they are actually doing by division against that objective. Next is field work, key account sales calls. Now, I'm going to actually ask someone to raise their hands and just share with me what you may think would go into this section of field work and key account sales calls. So looks like John has raised his hand. That's absolutely right, John. That's a great example. If you see what this particular area sales manager laid in, she recapped a market work with the sales manager, where she got a win in a new account, used some data to drive a distribution win, and got some display activities out of it. So third section is key account focus results. So of that key account call or that market work with, what were some of the results and maybe additional follow-up that's needed? So here they worked the market, but now they need to follow up that rack that was committed to actually made it into the store. Follow-up is so key in anything we do. As you all know, we work hard, but when we're out and we're getting commitments, we got to make sure we have the steps and tools in place to follow up on those commitments, and ultimately will drive success and results for us individually as well as the company as a whole. And lastly, new ideas to drive business. I'm going to ask the group again, what do you think some examples of this could be? Let's, John again. I see John's got his hand raised. Thank you, John. That's absolutely right, John. That is a great example. And here's an example from this ASM. This was a promotional that was created, Cabs for Dads, centered around Father's Day with the great portfolio of Cabernets that we have with Delicado. So they identified where they were looking for expansion outside of the original one that it was destined for. So we went through KSO SMART goal results section, section 2, trade focus recap. And now we'll move on to section 3. And as I spoke earlier, you have internal, external communication. You both also have verbal and nonverbal. So as we're communicating via email or Zoom calls or sales meetings at the actual distributor office, we have those with the distributor as well as Delicado. So we want to be able to make sure we're capturing those. So in this activity, we have 4 sections. We have what were the business meetings reviewed, review meetings that were attended. And here's an example of what that just may be. So conducted H1 business update review Zoom call with a particular area of a state and channel. In this particular instance, they outlined top priorities on a Finish Strong program and gained commitments on that call. You can see the area sales manager also listed who was on that particular call. This is great. And I like what she did here because it gives me, the regional sales manager, when I'm able to look at this to see, okay, if I need to follow up, and if you're being transparent with your boss, your report, how can he or she help? So maybe we're slow out the gates after the commitments came in this call, and I could follow up with a Joe, a Scott, or a Byron to get that commitment. So you see the follow-up we just talked about. This is where she would lay that out. So before I actually give you the example of that, let's see if there's anyone who could actually say what may be some follow-up from this particular call. Susan just raised her hand. That's right. Maybe it's looking like it's getting a commitment. So here we go. Attained commitment on a big program we had for Noble Vines, 850 case goal. They committed to the goal, right? They asked for follow-up out of that call. Can you break down those reports by AM level. So then you can see who's pulling their weight. So in this instance, the ASM captured all that here, and this reminds her to now follow up and take action on that commitment that was made on the call. There was another ask for more ZAB coupons to help close the gap. Okay. Next, we have incentive business recap sent. So a program's only as good as a program if you're tracking it, right? And you're consistently update. And when you come to the conclusion of the program or achieving your SMART goal or coming close, you're sending a recap or an update to that. So this is where you would capture what is happening throughout the current week for that. So maybe it's a mid-month email to your teams on an objective, or it's an end of the month close. In this instance, this was a mid-month update on some key initiatives running in that given channel. And then she also laid out something that goes out each month in this particular state called the Delicado Minute that is sent out that highlights all of the objectives and upcoming key focuses for those channels, both on Indie and chains for that given upcoming month. And lastly, some examples of what other would be. I'm going to ask to raise your hand again to see if anyone could see within distributor and Delicado interaction and communication, what may be an example of an other that you could list here? Well, no, I like that, John. That's great. And here's an example of one that she listed here where she had an on-premise meeting with Shannon Spalding, which is a young lady who oversees a certain market in this given state, and talked about some upcoming opportunities that we can do on premise once full teams are back in swing into the market. So, and now we're going to go to, all right. Now that we've concluded section 3, let's move on to the last section, section 4, which is market insights, issues, and opportunities. So within this segment, we have 4 areas to be filled in. As you see, market or distributor issue or opportunity. And I'm going to present a question to the group now. So what may be an example of a market or distributor issue or opportunity? With every issue, you hope that an opportunity comes from it. So I see John's raised his hand again. That's a great example. John, as you see here, here's some insight that maybe the regional or divisional manager may not know at this particular time. And this ASM has laid it out on her weekly. So Ferrari Carano announcement, and this particular wholesaler is looking to be losing this and going to a competing distributor. Well, she's identified that this presents a unique opportunity for us because we have some items within our own portfolio that could fill that void for our distributor in this market. So you see she added it to a program she already had going, losing this, think this, and this is a great area to capture that. And each week, when you're looking back at your past weeklies, you can see that it's here and how you need to follow up on this. You see, distributor updates will be the second. This is where a lot of intel comes from the streets, and us, whether in the RSM or division level, we get a lot of insights and stuff from a lot of you all who are in the market each and every week, because best ideas always come from the streets. And sometimes some of the insight we get, we otherwise wouldn't have had without your help. So here's an example of a distributor update. This particular weekly was done during our COVID scenario that has been happening. So you can see with this particular update that the on-premise team was still furloughed, and she had learned with this particular weekly that some sales managers were starting to be brought back, and now we could start tailoring our efforts to how re-attack those from our new starting line coming out of when things go back to normal post-COVID. So we all hope. So some competitive insights. Let's ask a question here. What would be an example of a competitive insight that's out there? I see we have Susan again. I like it. Yeah, that's great. So here's some competitive insight for this particular example. We learned that there were some big in-house suppliers with this particular wholesaler who were having their fiscal end of year, and how that translated to that, whether positive or negative, and how we can overcome that. It looks like this was some priority goals that we were hoping to gain were difficult to during this. This is where you can provide that. Happy to say that in this particular instance, even with some of those limited spots, this particular ASM was able to get the focus from his and her wholesaler and get those commitments that were made. So, biggest win of the week. This is the fun section. There's a reason it's highlighted. So this is where you can lay out what came from some of the trade focus recap, or maybe the win was a commitment that came from the previous section, you know, on a call with the wholesaler, or maybe it was translating and taking something from a market insight or an issue and turning it into an opportunity. So in this particular instance, you see both an independent and a chain example. So 50K drop at a big independent. So that was straight sales. And then you see a commitment from the chain team on something cold box related and an initiative taking with 446 sharp and a big chain. So that's great. So we've gone through the 4 sections. You got KSOs. All right. Oh, let me stop you there. Hold on. All right. And actually, lastly, now we went through the 4 sections. But there's always a last section, right? So at the bottom of this sheet, this is where you get to have bragging's okay. You get to advertise what are some of your wins in the market. So this is a section where you can drop in some display picks. Maybe it's a wine list success, or maybe it's some competitive activity like we talked about. Maybe it's a unique point of sale piece we saw another supplier utilizing that we could potentially mimic or recraft and get our trade marketing team involved and take a similar approach at a later part in the year. So also through Yammer, where we advertise this, we can put it on our weekly here. So as you see, all right. And speaking of Yammer, by show of hands, we got 8 of us on the call here. Show of hands, who is currently using Yammer? Okay. Looks like we got 7 of 8. Listen, there's no better avenue to share successes out there for the market. Not only are you advertising some of the wins and creativeness and things and activity that's happening in your own individual market, it also helps for people getting ideas out in the market. I'll tell you just an example of one that I saw from someone I believe was in the Midwest with ZAB. It was a holiday program, and they had coined the term TIS Z season, and they tied a Zack Attack program around that. I saw that on Yammer and some creative point of sale created around that. And we were able to take that program locally in Florida and create a program around it just a year ago. And we're looking at repeating that program this year for Finish Strong. So if you do not use Yammer, I encourage you to, with these modules that you have throughout Delicato U between GPS one-on-ones and things of that nature in the weekly. That's where you're going to want to showcase what you are actually putting on Yammer week in and week out. So I absolutely encourage you to do that. So within the weekly section, these will be some things you would also find on our local Yammer for Delicato Family Wines. So here's some examples of display picks from the market that week. You see the distribution dashboard down in the left showing some activity through that week or given month. Hot off the press, you see a Delicato Minute that we mentioned in the weekly. This is an example of where it fell. And here was some stuff with some wins that came digitally in the environment and landscape we're in right now. So important. So we've gone through the 4 sections of where you're actually inputting comments, data, objectives, results. You have your section 5 at the bottom of the Excel sheet where you're actually going to list some wins, some successes. And here, right, is your final version of the Excel format weekly. So you see in the top left corner of your screen, KSO Smart Goal results. You see trade focus recap. Over to the right, you see distributor and Delicato Family Wines interaction and communication. And then you have your market insights, issues, and opportunities. So this is what will be an Excel version. This is what you'll be sharing. We took in a lot today for those who just saw the weekly for the first time. But this will be coming more comfortable to you as you use it week in and week out and ultimately make this work for you. So in closing, everyone's favorite time, it's quiz time, right? So let's make sure we all learn something here today. And let's go through a couple questions to close out the day before I get you on to your next module with Delicato U. So first question out the gates, talked about KSOs. First one with show of hands, what does KSO stand? I didn't even get to finish it. John again, Johnny on the spot. You're absolutely right. Key selling objective. Outstanding. So we have our national ones, and then we want to figure out how to take those nationals, localize them to our individual market. So speaking of KSOs, what are the 4 KSOs? John, you can't answer again. Susan stepped up. All right, what are they? Absolutely right. Great job, Susan. Expand distribution. This is where we're focusing really on our glass brands, that $8 to $15 glass. Boda Box breakthrough, expanding import leadership, and then fine wine growth with our Transcendent portfolio. So you got your KSOs. We then talked about something else, right? A very important acronym, SMART, when we're making SMART goals. So what does SMART mean? Connie came to the table. Boom. You're going to take the whole thing. She did. Specific, measurable, attainable or achievable, relevant, and time-based, right? Timely. All right. Now let's put a true or false into action. I'm going to give you an example of a SMART goal. Let me know true or false if you think this is a SMART goal. So, grow distribution on Nighthawk in the independent channel. All right, John came back in. You're absolutely right, John. False. So let's actually ask the group here, why is this false, right? You see the SMART goal acronym broken out right above. Why is this goal not a SMART goal? I see some comments. Yeah. Wasn't measurable. We asked tracking, right? Time-based. When are they growing this distribution and what is the time base it is? So there's a couple key elements that are missing from this. How could they take this and turn this into a SMART goal? Well, it's growing that distribution by a specific measurable account, 50%. It's relevant against core Boda SKUs, and it's in the independent channel during Q2. So during a 90-day period, that's when they're being asked to achieve this objective. So that is an example. And last question, only 5 for this quiz. The most important one, what is yours truly, your instructor? What is my favorite comedy movie of all time? John, Susan, Connie, everyone got this one right. Love that you guys are paying attention. Tommy Boy, absolutely fantastic movie. For some reason, you haven't seen it, strongly encourage you to go see it. So guys, gals, in summary, some final thoughts. I'd like to present a question to you. By show of hands, did you find this class helpful? So we were just on for a little over 30 minutes walking through this module. By show of hands, yep, 8 of 8. Looks like we got a couple thumbs up, some claps. Thank you for that. Absolutely. So I'd now like to position to the group, in addition to find this helpful, if you did, what's really one thing you can take away from this module and actually apply and put into action in your own respective market. So let's just go around the horn real quick. John, you've been eager to raise your hand throughout the module. Let's start with you, and then we'll go around. All right. That's great, guys. So listen, at the end of the day, we just walked through the weekly, we walked through the new form. We talked about making it work for you. So ultimately, if we put some of these things and take the time, keyword time there, to put into these things, we can all make our lives easier and be uniform and have a tool at our disposal to help us be more successful, follow up on commitments made, be transparent with both our wholesaler as well as our internal managers at Delicato, and ultimately drive results for the company, both localized and ultimately bubbling up to our national KSO. We do all of that, we no longer have to look like this, right? Love that movie, guys. So listen, I want to thank everyone for your time today. It's been great talking with you. I'll now open up the floor. If anyone has any questions or any feedback that they may have at the end of this module, making the weekly work for you. Thank you for everyone's time.